Hello everybody, I'm Justin from Playing Board Games, and with me today is Mike, and we are going to be talking about our top 5 two-player board games. We've made a bunch of list videos on this channel before for our Arkham Horror the card game content, but we also play a lot of other board games too, so we thought we would get everyone else in the Playing Board Games crew rotating through this with me and Mike, talking about our top 5 games for various parts of the board gaming world. But because this is just me and Mike to start it off, we're just testing out the ideas, see what we like, see what we don't, and we're going to be talking about, as you can see, over here, right there, our top 5 two-player board games. So Mike, before we get into this list, what kind of were your credentials for this list? Like, what made these top 5 games hit your list?
I think my stuff why I chose these games is because some of them are also able to play one player, which I thought was top, because then if you don't have a second player, you can just play by yourself if you want to. And they were also sort of stuff I miss from the table, like from being at the table, and what I like interactions with playing people playing on the table. And one of mine, which I'll say in the thing, but it's a specific thing I miss.
Yeah. For me as well, like this list was kind of inspired because we imagine a lot of people are at home, potentially with roommates or significant others, and there might just be 2 of you, and these are good games to approach it. For me, a lot of it was some of my games play only 2 players, but then others I prefer to play at 2 players. I think they play better with less downtime between your turns than it happens with other players as well. The other thing I was trying to focus on was like smaller games that you could play in like 45 minutes. There is I think there are some things on my list that aren't small and don't play in 45 minutes, but that was another thing that was like big to me. Mike, before we get started, do you have any honorable mentions that did not make the cut?
Honorable mentions that did not make the cut. The entire Exit series, I was wafting back and forth if I should put it on my list, but I didn't. So I think, though, it is a great honorable mention because they're great by yourself and they're great with any amount of players.
Yeah.
It just takes you longer for the less players you have because you have less people thinking about it.
Unless you're puzzle pros, right? That's the other thing.
Unless you're puzzle pros. And my other one, honorable mention, is Santorini.
Nice.
It's both a 2-player and a 1-player game because there's also puzzle modes to it and stuff that you can do. But it's just like chess. It's just a sort of a more dynamic chess. And it's also on my, for a 2-player game. 2
of my honorable mentions, I have Dominion, which is a fantastic deck building game that plays, I think, best at 2 players, but it ended up not making the cut on mine. But Dominion is a great game for 2 players, as well as Mansions of Madness, the second edition, which has an app that plays the game for you. You can also play that one solo, but I think it plays really well at 2 and even 3 players. So that's why it ended up not making the cut, because you can play it at 3.
Dominion was also on my, I just made a short list that was 10 or 12 games. Dominion was also on there, and I did not choose it because of the fact there's so many different things to it. There's so many different expansions, and it just feels overwhelming.
And it's not one of yours on the list later that you can kind of just pick up and play with any of the expansions, which we'll get to when we get there. We're not going to do too much spoilers, but let's dive right in with Mike's number 5, which is a big honking recommendation. Mike, I'll let you take it.
Number 5 is Gloomhaven, and it's the only reason this is the one that it's on my list because of a specific reason, because I miss RPGs at a table. And I think it would be a great game to bring to your table too, even if you're just alone, because you can play by yourself. But it would help fill that void of RPGs.
I think as well, the game's expensive, the box is big, there's a lot of content, but if you played 1 mission a week with your roommates, you would not be done the game in the box by the time the pandemic is done, right?
100%. That's the other reason that it made it over Dominion, is because I think there's a lot more replay value in Gloomhaven than Dominion.
Yeah, it's I disagree with that just on the general of what deck building.
Dominion could
Dominion
be,
is
yeah,
literally
that's fair.
you can play it forever, but I do think in terms of what you get out of a single purchase, yes, it's more money, but if you buy just the core set of Dominion versus buying Gloomhaven, it comes with the caveat too that you want to get a heavy game that's very in depth, which requires a lot of strategy and teamwork. It does play very well solo. I have played solo as well. It's a fun time even in solo mode.
So and I think it just really helps because I remember the times we've played it, it's helped fill a void of RPG, even video game RPG. It has helped fill that void. So
okay, my number 5 is Terraforming Mars. This game is one of the ones that I think plays better at 2 players because it just takes too long with 3 or 4 players. And in 2 players, when you get to know the game, you can finish a game in like an hour, 90 minutes probably when you're starting. But this game plays differently every time, and there's a lot of game in the box. It's my favorite of the engine builders. Because I think it plays really nicely, and you really feel like later in the game when you get to those later stages, you really are building an engine that is like fun to run, right? Because you can just do so many bonkers things. There's a lot of replayability in the box as well too, with just the very nature of the corporations you can get, but also the fact that you're going to be seeing different cards each time, and you if you try to force the same strategy, you're going to just end up losing rather than adapting to what the game gives you, which is a really fun part of gaming.
And my comment on it is it also does have a one-player mode, and I've never tried it in the actual board game one of it, but I have tried it on the online version.
I have played the both online, the digital and the physical solo mode, and I played so much 2-player that my brain doesn't work for how you play in solo. I'm too busy trying to beat Mike than trying to beat the board game, and you fall behind really quickly when you're not fighting a human.
Yeah, I agree with that, is that I've played it solo a few times, and I've lost all the time to the board because the fact that I'm like, I just need to get concentrate on one thing.
But now you need to do everything.
The other player will do the other thing. You need to do everything.
Also, Terraforming Mars has, I think, the best kind of conflict between players, where there's a few cards that do things, but they cause you to lose points, and they're really not that bad. They're not game breaking.
No.
Mike, let's go to your number 4.
My number 4 is Lanterns. And even though I think it does play really good at more than 2 players, I think 2 players is just fine. And it's a good short game to just pass a bit of time. It's cute, it's fun, it's quick.
It's easy to play, easy to understand.
It's easy to play, it's easy to learn, it's easy to but there's also a depth to it that if you continue playing it, there's strategies and little things that you can do to make your game just a little bit better and try and get just a few more points over your opponent.
Yeah, with that note as well, I really feel like 2-player Lanterns is more chess-like than 4-player Lanterns, where you kind of put down a tile and you're like, everyone's going to get something anyway, what's the point? But in 2-player, you're really trying to eke out any advantage in points you can get, or color cards you can get over your opponents. And it's a lot easier to sabotage one person than it is to sabotage 3 people. Now, I say sabotage, it's still Lanterns. It's a very cute game about floating lanterns. It's a friendly game. Sabotage isn't the right word for it, but that's the intention behind it.
Yeah.
All right, my number 4 is The Bloody Inn. Otherwise known as the game where I convinced Mike to kill bodies when cops are coming. So,
every time.
The Bloody Inn is probably one of my favorite board games, and it plays so strange, but the theme is so fun. Essentially, you are an innkeeper who, to make ends meet, you're paying people to help kill inn patrons for you, and then you have to hide the bodies before the cops come. It plays in a cool way where all of your cards are your resources for the actions you want to take, but some cards are better at paying for certain things than others, and you also get rewards from them. The game feels different each time you play as well. That's a big thing for me. I like it when you are forced to face a new strategy with each game you get, And the Bloody Inn does that because you're not going to know what's going to be your opening flop of X many guests. It plays good. It plays more than 2, but this is one that I feel like I really like the dynamic that a 2-player game has. It kind of feels just the most... it feels very intimate when you're playing with 2 players in the Bloody Inn. Because...
And I think more than 2 players, I think there's a lot more downtime, and this is a game that you're like, oh, I have a thing in my head, and I just need to do it. And other people playing sometimes can mess that up. If it's just 2-player, then you can really go, oh, that player, I think this player's going to do this because this would be the game, right?
Yeah, it's a gorgeous back and forth. I agree. That's a good point. All right, Mike, let's go to your number 3.
Robinson Crusoe Adventures on the Cursed Island. I think this one also it's great 2 or 1 player. There is the 1-player mode to it. I've never done it, but it does exist. I think it plays really, really well with 2 players. And like it's just such a cool theme. And it has really cool mechanic of how the days pass and it depends on the mission you have or how those days move and how you go through. And then like there's harder, you can play on the easiest and sort of blow through it, but there's also harder campaigns you can go through. Similar to Gloomhaven is there's different campaigns you go through. They don't, unlike Gloomhaven, they don't match up with each other. You're not playing through an entire storyline, but there is different little modes, and the potential is also there is that they could come out with new ones as well.
Yeah, I think what the difference between Robinson Crusoe versus Gloomhaven is Robinson Crusoe, you actually get less content in your box, but the content I would say is actually better designed in Robinson Crusoe because it's harder. Number one, like Robinson Crusoe is
a difficult game.
It'll punch you, and it'll knock you down, and then just punch you 3 times in the back of the head while you're trying to get up.
Well, and I think too, Gloomhaven's really more like it's co-op, but it's also competitive because you're fighting for treasure and loot. But in Robinson Crusoe, there is no if you fight each other, there is no winning.
Yes, yeah, it's very much like Robinson Crusoe is an exercise in pure action efficiency. And very flavorful action efficiency, which actually doesn't come up too often when you're when you're playing a board game. But like, not only is this game like very well designed, but it's very flavorful and it's very challenging, and it's going to ask you to be your best board gamer. So there's a lot of replay value because you're going to lose your scenarios quite a bit before you start winning. And even then, honestly, replaying scenarios is really fun in Robinson Crusoe because there is a variety in the game of the things that can happen to you and the upgrades.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's like 4 different decks that can come up of random events that come up, and they all are different. And so
sick.
It's a good one.
All right, my number 3 is Patchwork. This game is made for just 2 players. It's incredibly simple, but man, is it a mind bender in terms of getting you to strategize and think of the best things you can be doing on your turn. Who would have thought something as simple as just filling a board with little patchwork patterns would provide such important strategic decisions that if you make the wrong one, you will regret it almost immediately. This game's also, it plays differently each time too, with just a very simple setup of randomly scattering the pieces that are available to buy at the start of the game. And because it's played for 2-player, the turns are quick, and it's like, to me, the second best made for 2-player game that I have played, only losing out to one of the ones that are on my list to come up.
I think Patchwork's like a 2-player Tetris.
Yeah,
but if one person makes a move, you're like, I can't do anything.
Yeah. It also has a very fun sub-game to see if you can not only beat your opponent, but beat yourself, or, in the perfect world, completely fill up your grid. Wouldn't that be nice? I think Mike's been the closest, missing like 2 or 3 squares.
I have. It's been very low, and it's hard. That's a hard one, filling up your grid. So
it's like playing every one of your tokens in Blockus. It would just feel so good. All right, Mike, let's get to your number 2.
My number 2 is Ascension. This is the deck builder I chose. because I think Ascension is a fantastic 2-player game, and it is only a 2-player game. You cannot play more.
I think you can play more.
Can you play more?
Yeah, we've only ever played it 2-player though.
Okay, then it's best at 2-player.
I think I just have brainwashed you because of that. You can also actually even play it solo, and the solo mode is very fun.
I knew there was a solo mode.
Yeah.
I have not tried the solo mode, but Ascension 2-player I think is best. Is so good. The give and take of the thing and all the different expansions you can get for it. I mean, it's the same as Dominion. There's so much different expansions, but even the base game, there is so much in it, and there's so much stuff that can come up, and there's so much strategy you can get out to build different types of decks, right? Like Dominion, I feel is you're kind of maybe pushed down a line depending on what your opponent does, but Ascension you're not. It's just whoever plays the best version of their game in Ascension.
Ascension
and I think
can
that's
play
why.
4 players. It does play up to 4.
There you go. It can play 4 players.
I agree though with the idea that it plays best at 2 because Ascension can lead to very long turns much longer than Dominion. So I can't even begin to fathom that downtime in a 4-player game when already in a 2-player game it can get pretty long.
We've had like minute turns in.
I've only played Ascension 2-player, and I'm happy to keep it that way. It's because it plays best at 2. I can't deny that at all. Also, a lot of people like this is the one that I was mentioning earlier. A lot of Ascension, when you buy a box, you get at least it's the case for what I have bought for Ascension. When you buy the box, you get what you need to play in it. Unlike Dominion. I don't want to get quoted on that because it could be wrong, but I have 2 expansions for Ascension and both came with everything you needed to play in the box.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's like that for all of them. I think Ascension actually even has some 2-player only expansions as well. But once again,
maybe that's what I'm thinking.
That. Okay, my number 2 we're going to stop briefly on for a second and Mike will understand why. My number 2 of Castles of Burgundy, but Mike's number 1 is Castles of Burgundy. So we can talk about this one together. So it's because it's like at the same time, but he likes it a little bit more than me. I'll let you go first.
How much does Castle of Burgundy go up to? I mean, we played it with more than 2. It plays up to 4. Okay. I mean, I think it's best at number 2.
Yeah.
We have played 3-player.
I've played it at 3, and it's fine at 3. But it's a wonderful, wonderful 2-player game.
Wonderful 2-player game, and I think it has so much replayability to it because again, like all of the ones on our list so far, there's a randomness to it. There's a randomness of the board. There's a randomness to the tiles that turn up at what time. So like you're like, oh, I want to do my farms. I'm gonna do only pigs, and then you'll never get pigs.
Yeah, that's a Mike problem. Never getting the animals he wants from his farmlands.
So you have to adapt to the board game. You have to adapt to the board because you're playing against your other player, but you're also playing against the board in this one.
Definitely. A thing I really like about 2-player is that it really feels like resource grab isn't the right word, but you got to like make the optimal decisions for what you want to grab when you want to grab it because the board, it scales to the number of choices available depending on the number of players.
Yeah.
But it really, the things you want, you don't know if they're going to be there, and you kind of are at the whim of your dice, but with the correct decisions and strategy beforehand, you will really... You'll be able to get what you want when you want it, assuming your opponent doesn't get there first. The other thing that's really fun in 2-players is working with the turn order, because the turn order changes throughout Castles of Burgundy. And as I just said, being...
in a 3-player game, I feel that's way less important.
Yeah, it's less important than in a 2-player game. At least in the way we play. But in a 2-player game especially, being first is good. And there's a nice little kind of like tug of war between you and your opponent when it comes to determining turn order through some of the actions you can take in the game. And the last thing I really like about Castles of Burgundy, and Mike can attest to this as well, is there's a lot of room for player growth to get like to like learn and understand how the game clicks. There's a lot of discovery to be had, because Mike and I have played this game 2-player a lot, and now like it's a like a close boxing match where it's hard to know who's going to come out on top.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great game.
Very much. Yeah, very true. Great game.
Okay, my number 1 is another game made just for 2 players, and that is called Targi. So this one is has some of my favorite action selection mechanics in board games, where there's basically, it's like a 3 by 3 by 3 and then 4 corners. So like it's like a it's a square, it's a rectangle, and there's a bunch of cards in the middle. So you get to place your action tokens on any of the non-corner edges of the board, and then you and your opponent cannot place opposite of your token. And then once you've each placed your 3 tokens, I believe. It's been a while since I've played Targi. Wherever everything intersects the sight lines between your tokens, you get those resources. I think it's incredibly clever, and there's a lot of kind of control you can have over your own turn, but also your opponent's turns as well. Especially if you know they want something, you can really take advantage of it when it comes time to your turn. It's just my favorite 2-player game. Like, I love Castles of Burgundy, but I can play it at 3 players. Like, if I had to choose, and I did have to choose for this exact list video, if I had to choose my favorite 2-player game, it was easily Targi. I wrote that down, and I'm like, this is what I'm going with, because I love this game, and I'm so happy I got it. And I highly recommend it to anyone who, like, games with a significant other or a roommate, or just likes 2-player games. If you don't have Targi, I think Targi is the best bang for your buck when it comes to a 2-player game.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of forgot about Targi. I don't know if it would have made my list, but I do agree. If you are into 2-player games, I think it is a great addition to anybody's collection.
Definitely. Well, cool. That is Mike and I's top 5 2-player board games. I think next time I'll try to remember to make the last slide, which is just our whole list in text form. That's not here there. My apologies for that. But this is a tester video. We do want to record more of these because they're fun to do. And if you have any suggestions for list videos you want to see, as well if there's any cast members in Playing Board Games that you want to get on this series to talk with us about board games, let us know in the comments below. And the last thing you can do is, if you like this video, smash that like button. If you're not subscribed, subscribe to our channel. We release a ton of board game, living card game, and other content throughout the week. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you very soon. And as always, GG's.